He struck a pregnant woman at the mall, not knowing he had just destroyed his empire. He thought she was just a nobody, slow, vulnerable, insignificant, and in his way. So, he raised his hand and slapped her hard. But what he didn't know, the expectant mother he humiliated owned the very ground beneath his feet. The land his billion-dollar mall empire was built on. And worse, she held the power to strip away everything he'd built in a single decision. Now she holds the key to everything Marcus ever owned. One slap, one moment of rage, and everything crumbled. It all started as Marcus Beaumont's Lamborghini purrs to silence in the VIP parking section of Grandview Shopping Center. His Italian leather shoes click a rhythm of ownership across marble floors that generate millions in revenue monthly. Each step calculated to announce his presence in territory he believes he commands absolutely. After 15 years of ruthless business expansion, he's finally reached the pinnacle of retail dominance. The shopping center sprawls around him like a commercial cathedral, its glass ceiling reflecting his tailored suit chosen specifically to project power and success. This isn't just a property inspection. This is his victory lap through an empire built on calculated aggression and financial supremacy. His phone buzzes with another Forbes notification celebrating his recent acquisition, but he dismisses it. Today is about more than media validation. It's about savoring complete control over every inch of profitable real estate. 2 miles away, in her modest law office overlooking the city, Elena Rodriguez closes her laptop and checks the security feeds from the shopping center. The multiple camera angles show every corridor of the property she inherited, every corner where people reveal their true nature when they think they're unobserved. She told her assistant she was visiting family, but the only visit she's making today is to the mall her late grandmother built from nothing. 15 years of watching Marcus Beaumont expand his retail empire taught her that powerful men act differently when they believe they're surrounded by employees versus when they encounter people they consider irrelevant. Her family's land lease agreements require renewal, and she needs to evaluate whether this tenant deserves to continue building wealth on property her ancestors died protecting. The man who rents her grandmother's land will have his character tested today. He just doesn't know it yet. The central atrium welcomes Marcus with soaring architecture and the sweet sound of cash registers echoing from every direction. Skylight floods polished floors with natural illumination, while designer storefronts display merchandise worth more than small countries' GDP. This should be his moment of absolute satisfaction. But something irritates him in the crowd's energy. Where's the immediate path clearing he expects? Where's the respectful distance people should maintain when they see him approaching? Instead, there's only the normal flow of weekend shoppers going about their business. Through his building's security system, Elena watches his confidence shift through multiple camera angles. She can see the moment he straightens his shoulders, summoning the armor of entitlement he's perfected over 15 years of believing money equals superiority. The first test has begun, and he has no idea what's coming. From near the fountain comes gentle conversation, soft and tired from someone clearly resting after walking. The sound annoys Marcus like nails on marble. This is supposed to be his power walk through profitable territory, not some pedestrian obstacle course of loitering civilians. He follows his irritation with growing impatience, his handmade shoes announcing his approach on floors that gleam like mirrors. What he finds stops him cold. A young woman sitting on the fountain's edge, obviously pregnant, resting with one hand supporting her lower back. She wears simple maternity clothes, her face showing the exhaustion that comes with carrying new life. A small shopping bag sits beside her containing what appears to be baby essentials. She doesn't look up when Marcus's expensive presence fills her peripheral vision. 2 miles away, Elena leans forward, watching Marcus encounter the woman she hired to test his character. The dismissal ignites something dangerous in Marcus's chest. Fury born from years of people scrambling to accommodate his every whim. Here he is, owner of the most successful retail empire in 3 states. And this pregnant nobody can't be bothered to move when she sees him approaching. Each passing second without acknowledgement feels like personal insult, challenge to the authority he believes his net worth grants him. The woman continues her quiet rest, seemingly oblivious to expensive suits and obvious impatience brewing nearby. Through his own security system, Marcus has access to feeds showing his behavior, but he's too focused on his anger to consider who might be watching. Elena observes his face transform from mild annoyance to something far uglier. She warned her employee this might happen, but seeing it unfold in real time makes her stomach tighten with disgust. The silence stretches until it becomes unbearable, pressing against Marcus's temples like pressure before a financial storm. Finally, the woman shifts position and Marcus expects proper deference. Quick movement away from prime fountain seating, acknowledgement of his obvious importance, scrambling to make room for someone who clearly outranks her economically. Instead, the woman's movement is careful, protective of her unborn child, with deliberate pace that suggests she's not rushing for anyone. "Excuse me, sir," the woman says in a voice tired from pregnancy, but surprisingly steady. The greeting is polite enough, but there's something about its delivery that grates against Marcus's expectations. No hurrying to please, no obvious recognition of economic hierarchy, no immediate deference to wealth that should govern their interaction. Just simple, courteous acknowledgement that feels insufficient for the respect he's convinced he deserves. Elena's grip tightens on her phone as she watches the first cracks appear in Marcus's facade. "You're blocking the fountain access," the woman adds, glancing at his position that prevents other shoppers from approaching the water feature comfortably. The casual observation sends electric rage through Marcus's designer-clad frame. This is not how regular people behave when encountering obvious wealth. Where's the automatic deference? Where's proper recognition of someone who owns multiple properties worth hundreds of millions? The woman's continued rest feels like deliberate provocation, calculated refusal to provide the validation Marcus desperately craves. Every second she remains seated chips away at his sense of superiority. Every breath she takes in calm contentment feels like mockery of his power. In her law office, Elena watches Marcus's performance with mixture of fascination and growing revulsion. He's responding exactly as she predicted, but witnessing his entitlement firsthand exceeds her worst expectations. "Do you know who I am?" Marcus's voice cuts through mall ambience like blade dipped in venom, each syllable designed to command immediate recognition. The woman looks up with tired eyes that hold no intimidation, no rushing to apologize or explain. Instead, there's only quiet strength that comes from carrying life and facing whatever challenges each day brings. Through multiple camera angles, Elena watches Marcus's mask slip further, revealing something she's never seen captured so clearly on security footage. Her employee's eyes find the nearest camera for just a moment, and Elena knows she's thinking the same thing. This man is failing their test catastrophically. "I'm sorry, I don't." The woman responds honestly, shifting carefully to ease pressure on her back. She lets the words settle naturally, waiting for normal human interaction rather than the dramatic revelation Marcus expects. Her practiced response to dealing with difficult strangers shows years of customer service experience, but none of the fear Marcus believes he deserves. The absence of recognition hits like physical blow. No widened eyes of awe, no stammered apologies for not immediately knowing his reputation, no instant shift from casual interaction to proper reverence. Just patient confusion that offers no validation for the empire Marcus thinks everyone should acknowledge. On her office screens, Elena sees Marcus's slight tremor. He's getting exactly the test results she expected, and it's more damning than she hoped. "Marcus Beaumont, I own this entire shopping center." The statement explodes from his lips with force that makes nearby shoppers turn and stare, but the woman's response is maddeningly measured. She nods politely, as if processing routine information rather than receiving news of tremendous local importance. "That's nice," she says simply. And somehow those two words feel more insulting than outright disrespect would have been. There's no awe or acknowledgement. No recognition of what it means to control millions in retail revenue. Just bland acceptance that offers no validation for dominance Marcus thought everyone understood. Through her security feeds, Elena watches the interaction with growing satisfaction. This is exactly what her grandmother warned her about. Power without character is just wealth waiting to destroy itself. "Did I give you permission to sit here?" The question bursts from Marcus's mouth with venom that surprises even nearby security guards, but the woman's response is infuriatingly calm. She places both hands protectively over her pregnant belly, movements instinctive and defensive despite her measured tone. "I'm just resting, sir." The baby's been kicking all morning and my feet are swollen. Her explanation is reasonable, human, and completely dismissive of whatever authority Marcus believes he wields. When she speaks, her voice carries no trace of the fear or apology he expects. Through multiple camera feeds, Elena watches a pregnant woman show more dignity under pressure than a billionaire shows with unlimited resources. You will move when I tell you to move. This is my property, and you're in my way. Marcus's voice rises to a volume that makes crystal light fixtures in nearby stores seem to vibrate with contained violence. The woman meets his gaze with steady composure that comes from carrying life and refusing to let anyone diminish her worth. Sir, this is public seating in a shopping center. I'm not breaking any laws or causing any problems. The response is technically correct, legally sound, but something in its delivery makes Marcus's skin crawl with frustrated rage. There's no submission in the woman's tone, no acknowledgement of economic hierarchy that should govern their interaction. Worse, she doesn't back down when faced with obvious wealth and obvious anger. The continued composure feels like deliberate provocation, calculated refusal to provide the dominance Marcus desperately needs to feel. Through her surveillance system, Elena watches Marcus confront a pregnant woman with aggression that would make predators ashamed. The tension becomes unbearable, pressing against Marcus's temples like financial pressure before a market crash. This woman's refusal to show proper fear represents every deal that didn't close fast enough, every negotiation where people didn't immediately surrender to his will. The rage crystallizes into singular focus. This pregnant nobody will acknowledge his authority, will validate his position, will provide deference he's convinced himself the world owes him. The woman sits there with infuriating calm, apparently unmoved by storm brewing in the shopping center's heart. Her serene protection of her unborn child becomes the final provocation that breaks his carefully maintained business persona. Without thinking, without considering consequences, Marcus's hand flies through air with force of all his entitlement. In her law office, Elena's coffee cup crashes to floor as she watches the man who rents her family's land strike a pregnant woman across the face. The slap echoes through the mall's central atrium like gunshot. Sharp and final and irreversible. The sound seems to hang in recycled air, like curse reverberating through glass corridors with increasing intensity rather than fading into background noise. Marcus's palm stings from impact, but satisfaction he expected doesn't materialize. Instead, there's only growing realization that he's crossed a line he can never uncross, opened a door he can never close. The woman's head snaps to the side from force, but when she slowly turns back to face Marcus, there's no explosion of tears or hysteria, no dramatic reaction that would make sense of what just happened. Instead, there's only silence. Heavy, loaded, dangerous. Through her screens, Elena watches the pregnant woman absorb violence with dignity that makes Marcus's wealth look like costume jewelry, and she knows their test has revealed everything needed to destroy him completely. The woman touches her cheek gently, protectively cradling her belly with the other hand, as if shielding her unborn child from witnessing such cruelty. There's no screaming, no cursing, no collapsing in righteous indignation. Instead, she simply stands slowly, movements careful and deliberate, absorbing the moment with same grace she's maintained throughout the entire encounter. When she speaks, her voice is softer than before, but carries undertones that make Marcus's stomach twist with unexpected unease. I see, she says quietly. And somehow those two words contain more threat than any shouted accusation could carry. The woman doesn't demand apologies or threaten to call security. She simply stands there looking at Marcus with expression that suggests she's learned something important about him. In her law office, Elena closes her laptop with shaking hands, having seen enough to know this man's empire will be dust by morning. I see exactly who you are, Mr. Beaumont. The words aren't delivered with anger or hurt. They're spoken with quiet certainty of someone who has just received confirmation of something they suspected all along. There's something terrifying about the woman's composure, something that makes the mall's air conditioning feel inadequate against rising heat of consequence. This isn't how victims are supposed to react to assault. They're supposed to cry, threaten lawsuits, call for help, or at least show appropriate outrage. Instead, this woman looks at Marcus with something that might be pity, the kind of expression usually reserved for people who have just made catastrophic mistakes without realizing the full scope of their destruction. The calm assessment in her dark eyes makes Marcus feel exposed, vulnerable in ways his money never prepared him for. 2 miles away, Elena stares at paused security footage, processing the fact that the man who rents her family's land just revealed himself as someone capable of striking a pregnant woman in public. The woman gathers her small shopping bag with same deliberate care she's shown throughout their encounter, but now there's something different in her movements. Purposefulness that suggests phone calls being made, plans being set in motion, justice being summoned with quiet efficiency. She doesn't look at Marcus again as she prepares to leave, but her presence somehow fills the entire atrium with electricity that makes breathing difficult for everyone watching. "The mall owner should be here soon," she says conversationally, as if assault never happened. The casual tone makes Marcus's skin crawl with growing unease. There's no threat in her words, no promise of retribution, just simple statement that somehow feels like approaching thunder. The woman's continued composure in face of violence suggests someone accustomed to being underestimated, someone who might be far more connected than any random shopper has right to be. As the woman walks away, footsteps silent on marble that Marcus's Italian leather has been announcing all afternoon, terrible certainty begins settling in the pit of his stomach. Something about the entire encounter feels wrong. Not just morally wrong, but strategically catastrophic. The woman's unnatural calm, her complete lack of appropriate fear, the way she absorbed violence like she expected it and was somehow prepared for what comes next. Marcus's mind races through possibilities, but none provide comfort. He tries shaking off growing dread, tells himself he's overthinking simple interaction with random civilian. But the feeling clings like smoke, seeping into his lungs and choking him with bitter taste of mistakes that carry consequences he never considered. The silence that follows the woman's departure isn't peaceful. It's the kind of quiet that comes before financial storms, before everything you built collapses beneath your feet. The shopping center suddenly feels different around him. Not profitable, but predatory. Every security camera seems to point in his direction with judgmental precision. Every reflection in storefront windows shows truth he's trying to deny. The woman he just struck wasn't intimidated by his wealth, wasn't impressed by his claims of ownership, wasn't afraid of his obvious anger. Instead, she looked at him like she was seeing something unpleasant but predictable, something that confirmed rather than surprised her about the character of men who mistake money for permission to hurt others. The confidence that carried him through the front entrance begins evaporating like morning mist, leaving behind only cold reality that his power walk might have become something else entirely. His phone buzzes with Forbes notifications about his success, but now the alerts feel hollow, meaningless in face of growing certainty that he's made a terrible mistake. Marcus stands alone in an atrium that was supposed to showcase his dominance, but now feels like a crime scene where he's both perpetrator and star witness against himself. The echo of that slap seems to reverberate through glass corridors, growing louder instead of fading, carrying with it weight he doesn't yet understand. His reflection stares back from dozen polished surfaces, and for the first time, he doesn't like what he sees. The woman he struck is gone, but her presence lingers like ghost whispering warnings Marcus is only now beginning to hear. In the distance, he can hear sound of multiple cars approaching the VIP entrance. Not shoppers, but something that sounds like business convoy. Authority arriving with purpose. But instead of excitement about potential deals, all he feels is cold certainty that something fundamental has changed in the universe around him. The perfectly manicured hand that delivered the slap now trembles as he checks his appearance in storefront glass, trying to summon back confidence that brought him here. But it feels insubstantial as smoke, dissipating every time he tries to grasp it. The woman's final words echo with growing menace. "I see exactly who you are." Security guards begin moving through the mall with unusual purpose, their radios crackling with codes Marcus doesn't recognize but somehow fears. Their movements suggest coordination, preparation, response to something significant happening in their jurisdiction. Each guard who passes looks at him with expression that makes his expensive suit feel like target rather than armor. They've all heard about what happened, he realizes. Word travels fast in enclosed spaces like this. especially when someone commits an act so shocking it defies business ethics and basic human decency. A door opens somewhere in the mall's administrative section, followed by the sound of multiple expensive car doors slamming in the VIP parking area. Professional voices drift through the corridors. Legal conversations punctuated by the serious tones of people conducting urgent business. But instead of relief at hearing deal-making language, Marcus feels only growing dread. From the upper level of the mall, she appears. The same pregnant woman, but completely transformed. Gone is the simple maternity wear, replaced by elegant business attire that speaks of wealth, power, and legal authority accumulated over generations. She moves with fluid grace through corridors that clearly respond to her presence, pausing at administrative offices and reviewing documents with casual authority of someone who built this empire from inherited wisdom. There's no vulnerability in her posture now, no tired pregnant woman seeking rest. Instead, she carries herself like someone who owns everything around her, which Marcus realizes with growing horror might not be metaphorical. The transformation is so complete it takes his breath away. This isn't a random shopper who changed clothes. This is someone revealing their true nature after a performance has ended. The woman's bearing radiates authority that makes the mall's air conditioning feel inadequate against rising heat of approaching judgment. More business professionals appear from various offices and entrances, their faces showing mixture of legal satisfaction and barely contained outrage. They move with coordinated purpose through spaces that clearly belong to them, reviewing security footage on tablets and discussing liability with voices that carry decades of courtroom experience. Some whisper among themselves in legal terminology Marcus recognizes, but hoped never to hear directed at his business practices. They've all reviewed what happened, he realizes. Digital evidence travels instantly in connected buildings like this, especially when someone commits assault that threatens everything from insurance coverage to operating licenses. A voice echoes through the mall's public address system. Mr. Marcus Beaumont, please report to the administrative offices immediately. Mr. Marcus Beaumont to administration. The announcement bounces off glass surfaces like thunder before a financial storm. Each repetition echoing like countdown to consequences he doesn't yet understand. But it's what comes next that makes Marcus's blood turn to ice. This concerns your immediate lease termination and property evacuation requirements. The casual mention of lease termination sends electric shock through his nervous system. From the upper administrative level, the woman, whose true identity he's beginning to fear, descends toward the main floor with measured pace of someone who has all the time in the world to watch justice unfold. Her business attire rustles like whispers of approaching doom. The transformation is complete now. No trace of vulnerable pregnant woman remaining. Only devastating truth of whom Marcus actually struck across the face. Professional voices grow closer, accompanied by footsteps that sound like legal authority approaching with briefcases full of consequences. Soon they'll surround Marcus where he stands frozen like prey sensing approaching predators, cornered in territory he thought he controlled but apparently never owned. The marble floors that promised him profits now feel like foundation of his downfall. Each approaching footstep echoing with weight of consequences he never considered. Above him, the woman begins descending administrative stairs with measured pace of someone who owns all the time in the world to watch empire crumble. Her transformation from seeming victim to revealed authority figure is complete. And with each step she takes, Marcus's world contracts a little more. Through the mall's glass entrance, he can see multiple expensive cars in the parking area, their tinted windows reflecting afternoon sun like mirrors reflecting his shattered assumptions. Legal teams have arrived, and they've brought documentation, evidence to support whatever reckoning awaits him. The woman continues her stately approach, no longer disguised as random shopper, but revealed in her true form as someone whose family built everything around him. Each business professional they pass seems to nod in deference. Generations of legal expertise who built this retail empire through character and integrity, watching as someone who lacks both is about to face consequences for his actions. The air conditioning above circulates recycled air that somehow feels thinner with each breath, as if the building itself is rejecting his presence. In those mechanical sounds, he can hear fragments of possible futures, all of them ending badly. The sound of administrative doors opening echoes through the mall like opening notes of requiem. Legal authority floods into public spaces that will soon witness destruction of his retail empire. While the woman, because that's who she must be, that's the only explanation that makes sense of everything, continues her measured approach toward confrontation that will strip away every pretense and reveal truth in all its devastating legal precision. Marcus realizes with crystal clarity that he's not just facing consequences for slapping a pregnant shopper. He's about to watch everything he built slip away because he couldn't recognize the difference between genuine ownership and rental agreements, between real power and the illusion of control he'd been leasing his entire career. The woman reaches the main floor, her business attire rustling softly as she moves with confidence of someone who has never doubted her family's legal standing in this community. The contrast between this professional figure and the tired pregnant woman from earlier would be laughable if it weren't so terrifying. This is who Marcus struck, not a powerless shopper, but the landowner of the property he built his empire on. The woman whose family's approval could have secured his business future forever and whose disapproval will now destroy it completely. The test was simple: treat all people with basic human dignity. And he failed it so spectacularly that the consequences are only beginning to unfold. The mall fills with legal voices and professional footsteps, the sound of business authority gathering and justice preparing to be served with cold precision of people who value character above profit margins. As voices grow closer and shadows lengthen across marble floors that reflect his increasingly pale face, Marcus stands paralyzed in the center of an atrium that feels like courtroom where verdict has already been decided. The evidence surrounds him in the form of security cameras, shocked witnesses, and digital documentation that captured every moment of his moral failure. Above all, there's the woman herself, no longer hidden behind a pregnant shopper's disguise, but revealed as the ultimate authority in a building where Marcus just discovered he has no power at all. The slap that was supposed to clear his path has instead marked the beginning of his complete exposure as someone unworthy of the success he thought he'd earned through aggression and intimidation. Legal teams multiply in the administrative areas as the landowner returns with what sounds like property management, insurance representatives, and contract attorneys. Their voices carrying the professional authority of people who love and protect generational wealth. Soon they'll present Marcus with documentation revealing that the woman who wanted him gone from her family's property, and instead revealed himself as someone who would strike a pregnant tenant without provocation or remorse. The woman herself stands ready to present her case, no longer disguised as vulnerable shopper, but prepared to reveal exactly what kind of businessman Marcus truly is when he thinks no one important is watching. Marcus can hear his own heartbeat thundering over the mall's background music, can feel the walls of his carefully constructed empire closing in around him like legal trap he built himself. The marble beneath his feet feels less stable with each passing second, as if the very foundation of his success is crumbling under weight of truth about to be revealed through proper legal channels. The air conditioning above casts recycled atmosphere that seems to grow thinner as shadows of approaching judgment lengthen across floors that once promised everything and now threaten to reflect his complete and utter business failure. In the distance, he can hear professional voices discussing property law, lease violations, and immediate eviction procedures. Legal terminology that will soon reshape his entire understanding of who owns what in this arrangement. The woman who holds his fate stands ready for the business meeting with her legal team, ready for the moment when contracts are examined and character stands naked under fluorescent lighting of administrative offices. And Marcus realizes that everything he thought he knew about ownership, about respect, about the cost of violence is about to be rewritten in ways that will haunt him forever. Administrative doors swing open with weight of legal authority entering the mall, and professional voices fill marble corridors like thunder before financial storm. Ms. Rodriguez, we're ready to proceed. The voice belongs to what appears to be lead counsel, a woman in expensive suit carrying briefcases that suggest serious legal firepower. Thank you for the security footage. The documentation is quite comprehensive. Her words bounce off crystal surfaces, each syllable a nail in the coffin of Marcus's crumbling empire. But it's what comes next that makes Marcus's blood turn to ice. The lease termination papers are prepared, and we've contacted all relevant authorities about the assault. The casual mention of assault sends electric shock through his nervous system. From the administrative level, Elena Rodriguez, property owner and pregnant woman he struck, approaches with measured pace of someone whose family built their wealth through legal precision rather than aggressive expansion. Her business attire rustles like whispers of approaching financial doom. The transformation is complete now. No trace of the vulnerable shopper remaining. Only devastating truth of whom Marcus actually assaulted in her own building. Mr. Beaumont. Elena's voice carries weight of disappointment that could bankrupt nations. She reaches the main atrium and faces him with professional composure earned through generations of property management. I've been getting acquainted with your business practices. We had a very enlightening encounter. The pause before enlightening hangs in the air like blade waiting to fall. Legal team members exchange glances that speak volumes about property law and character assessments that determine lease renewals. Marcus can see recognition dawning as he processes Elena's transformation, her tone, and terrible silence radiating from security guards who witnessed everything. The test wasn't about recognizing wealth disguised as common shopping. It was about character, and the results are documented in high-definition video that will soon be evidence. What kind of encounter? He asks, though his voice suggests he already fears the legal answer. Elena approaches with tenderness reserved for delivering devastating news to people whose business empires are about to collapse. The kind that reveals who someone truly is when they think their money makes them untouchable. Mr. Beaumont, she says, her words falling like stones into still water, sending ripples of consequence through the marble atrium. You met me while I was resting during my pregnancy, as we arranged. You found my presence insufficient for someone of your obvious wealth and importance. The understatement drips with legal venom that could poison entire business districts, each word carefully chosen for maximum courtroom impact. What do you mean insufficient? Marcus's voice rises with defensive instinct warring against growing horror. He knows Elena's type doesn't exaggerate, doesn't embellish facts for dramatic effect. If she says something happened, it happened exactly as security cameras recorded it. The lead attorney steps closer, her litigation-hardened features softening with concern for what her client endured. Other legal professionals move strategically through the atrium as if already preparing for depositions and settlement negotiations. Elena touches her cheek gently, the same spot where Marcus's hand connected with devastating force captured on multiple camera angles. You found it so insufficient that you decided physical correction was necessary. You struck a pregnant woman across the face for the crime of not moving quickly enough to accommodate your perceived authority. The words land like legal bombs in the marble atrium, exploding everything Marcus thought he knew about tenant rights and property relationships. The color drains from Marcus's face as if someone opened financial valve and let his net worth pour onto polished floors. You're the landowner, he whispers. The realization barely makes it past his lips, strangled by disbelief and growing rage that makes his hands shake with restrained desperation. He looks around the mall and can see the exact moment when understanding transforms into something far more dangerous than simple business dispute. You own the property. All of it. Each word is pronounced with surgical precision, as if he's trying to make sense of legal relationship that doesn't make rational business sense. His phone shows property records he never bothered reviewing carefully. Lease agreements that clearly identify Elena Rodriguez as primary landowner and his company as tenant subject to her approval. The lead attorney's jaw sets with kind of professional anger that comes from watching clients being physically assaulted by people who don't understand basic legal hierarchies. Marcus's mouth opens and closes like drowning businessmen gasping for financial air, but no words come that could possibly explain away what multiple witnesses observed. I didn't know who you were. I thought you were just some random shopper. But how do you finish that explanation? How do you clarify that you struck someone because you believe their pregnancy made them inconsequential to your business success? Elena watches him struggle with same calm expression she maintained while absorbing his violence. Someone who has handled difficult tenants before and knows exactly how desperation sounds when it tries to dress itself up as righteous indignation. You thought I was what, Mr. Beaumont? She asks with deadly legal gentleness. A nobody. Someone whose humanity could be dismissed because I appeared vulnerable? Someone whose dignity mattered less than your imagined convenience? Each question is scalpel cutting away layers of business pretense to expose the moral rot beneath Marcus's financial success. That's not what I meant. Marcus's voice cracks with panic as he realizes how his unfinished sentence sounds to legal professionals gathered around him like tribunal. You were sitting there. You didn't acknowledge my authority properly. I was frustrated with inefficiency. Each word makes it worse, revealing more about his character than silence ever could. The legal team exchanges looks that suggest they've heard similar explanations from other defendants who thought wealth exempted them from basic human decency requirements. You struck a pregnant woman because she was resting. Elena's voice rises to volume that makes glass storefronts vibrate in their expensive frames. The accusation echoes through mall corridors like judgment rendered in open court. Elena raises one hand, and gesture silences the legal discussion more effectively than any gavel could. There's authority in that movement that speaks of generations spent commanding respect through character rather than volume or financial intimidation. Let me explain why this test was necessary, she says, settling into storytelling rhythm that carries weight of inherited wisdom. 25 years ago, my grandmother was the woman scrubbing floors in buildings like this. She cleaned offices for people who looked through her like she was invisible, who treated her dignity as something they could afford to ignore. She worked 3 jobs to save enough money to buy this land, to build the foundation of what would become prime retail real estate. Her voice carries pride tempered by memory of struggle, triumph earned through suffering that shaped her family into people who would never forget where they came from or why character matters more than quarterly profits. I know what it feels like to be dismissed by people who think business success determines worth, Elena continues, her gaze never leaving Marcus's face. I know the humiliation of having your humanity questioned because you don't immediately bow to wealth and perceived authority. When my property management company told me they wanted to renew your lease after 15 years, I insisted we evaluate your character, not just your financial statements and credit scores. Those can be manipulated. Character is something you either possess or you don't, and it reveals itself most clearly when wealthy people think they're dealing with someone powerless. The legal professionals nod in recognition of wisdom earned through generational experience, understanding why this woman, whose family built an empire from nothing, would never tolerate anyone who treats expecting mothers as obstacles to their convenience. The lead attorney's eyes hold tears of pride for her client's journey and fury for what she just endured. Marcus stares at Elena with growing comprehension, the security footage on various devices providing visual confirmation of her words. I watched you do it, she says quietly. And those 5 words carry more condemnation than any shouted accusation could deliver. I was monitoring security cameras from my office 2 miles away, hoping to see the businessman who rents our family's land treat a pregnant woman with basic human decency and respect. Instead, I watched you assault an expecting mother because she didn't move fast enough for your liking. Her voice breaks on the last words, 15 years of lease payments curdling into something that tastes like legal liability in her mouth. The security system shows timestamp after timestamp of Marcus's increasing aggression, building to the moment when his hand connected with her face in high-definition clarity that leaves no room for alternative interpretations. The most heartbreaking part, Elena adds with surgical legal precision, is that this was never about me personally. This was about discovering whether you could respect our community or just exploit our resources, whether you could see past pregnancy and perceived vulnerability to recognize basic human dignity. Whether you deserve to continue operating on land my grandmother died protecting. She moves closer to Marcus, who shrinks back as if proximity to such moral authority might burn his expensive suit. You failed spectacularly. Not only did you fail to show basic human decency, you chose violence against someone you perceived as powerless. That tells me everything I need to know about what kind of employer you are to your staff, what kind of neighbor you are to other businesses, what kind of person profits from our family's generational investment. Marcus's empire collapses inward like building with structural failure. Each pillar of his carefully constructed success snapping under weight of consequence he never considered. Please, I can change. I can learn. I can make this right. But the words sound hollow even to his own ears, desperate gasps from someone drowning in their own cruelty. The lead attorney speaks for the first time, her voice carrying authority of someone who has handled similar cases. Mr. Beaumont, you can't learn to have empathy you were born without. You can't study to develop character that should have been there all along. The judgment is final, delivered with certainty that comes from watching someone reveal their true nature under pressure. Legal team members nod grimly, understanding that some business relationships can never be repaired once character flaws destroy foundational trust. 15 years, Marcus whispers, more to himself than anyone else. 15 years I thought I owned this place. 15 years I built everything here thinking it was mine. His voice rises with each repetition, building to crescendo of realization and self-recrimination. But ownership was always an illusion. Success was always dependent on someone else's approval. Character was always the real foundation, and mine was never there to begin with. The phone in his hand shows lease agreements over and over, an endless loop of legal documents that prove everything he built was conditional, subject to renewal based on criteria he never bothered understanding. The marble atrium that welcomed Marcus with commercial promise now feels like courtroom where final judgment has been rendered. The glass ceiling seems dimmer, its natural light fractured into pieces that can never be reassembled into the golden future he imagined. Business portraits of successful retailers watch from store directories. Decades of merchants bearing witness to someone being expelled from their commercial district before his lease was ever truly secure. Elena stands surrounded by her legal team, protected by character that recognizes real threats when they reveal themselves through violence against innocent people. I think it's time for you to leave, she says with quiet finality. Your lease is terminated effective immediately. Your business operations are suspended pending investigation. Your chance to operate on our family's land died the moment your hand touched my face. Marcus looks around desperately for allies who don't exist, for explanations that might somehow undo what cannot be undone. Security guards who witnessed his earlier arrogance move into position, their faces showing mixture of justice served and pity for someone who destroyed their own future through cruelty they didn't have to choose. Elena, please, he begs. But she's already reviewing termination paperwork on her tablet, already processing 15 years of lease payments that will now end in legal liability instead of renewal. The man who built success on our family's land never existed, she says with devastating certainty. He was just a performance you gave until you thought no one important was watching. But someone was always watching, and now everyone knows exactly what kind of person you really are. The lead attorney steps forward with bearing of someone accustomed to handling unpleasant but necessary business proceedings. Mr. Beaumont, I suggest you remove your belongings and cease all business operations immediately. The alternative involves criminal charges and civil litigation that your reputation couldn't survive. The threat is delivered with businesslike efficiency. No malice, but absolute certainty about consequences for those who assault pregnant landowners. Elena adds her own weight to the dismissal. You came here believing wealth meant permission. Instead, you've revealed yourself as someone who lacks the basic human decency required to operate in our community. That's a trade that will cost you everything you thought you built. As Marcus stumbles toward exits that brought him such confidence just hours ago, Elena's voice follows him with final judgment. I've spent my life protecting what my grandmother built from people who think money excuses violence. You've spent years building nothing but impressive facades over empty character. The test wasn't whether you could intimidate us into submission. It was whether you could recognize that pregnancy makes someone more worthy of protection, not less worthy of respect. You failed that test with flying colors. And in doing so, you lost everything that actually mattered. The words echo off marble walls like prophecy, following Marcus toward future that suddenly holds nothing but bitter taste of consequences he created with his own perfectly manicured hands. The automatic doors close behind him with finality that seals more than architectural space. They seal his fate as someone who had everything within reach and threw it away for momentary satisfaction of putting someone in their place who turned out to own the place entirely. Behind the glass entrance, he can hear legal teams gathering close around their client, their voices mixing in harmonies of justice and protection that will never include his business interests again. The Lamborghini still waits in VIP parking, but now it feels like hearse carrying corpse of his retail empire toward future empty of everything he thought he deserved and full of everything he actually earned through character he never possessed. The engine starts with purr that now sounds like funeral dirge, carrying Marcus away from property lines that will never welcome him again. Through rearview mirror, he watches the shopping center shrink into distance. Not just buildings, but symbol of everything he could have maintained if only he possessed the character to deserve continued tenancy. The security cameras that captured his moment of violence continue recording, but now they document his exit from commercial world he was never truly meant to dominate. Inside the mall, the Rodriguez family and their legal representatives gather around Elena with protective instinct that comes from generations of defending what they've built. Elena touches her cheek one final time, not in pain, but in quiet satisfaction that her test worked exactly as intended. 25 years my grandmother waited to buy land worth protecting, she tells her legal team. I couldn't let someone who would strike a pregnant woman continue profiting from what she died building. The lead attorney deletes Marcus's contact information from property management files. 15 years of business relationship poisoned by one moment of revealed character. The lease agreement that generated millions in revenue sits void on marble conference tables, a legal document that promised prosperity but delivered truth instead. I thought he respected our community, Elena whispers to her counsel. But her attorney's hand on her shoulder carries comfort earned through legal wisdom. Now you know him completely, the lawyer replies. And knowing someone completely is the greatest protection you can have before making the biggest mistake of your business career. As Marcus drives through city traffic that seems to mock him with its normalcy, weight of consequence settles into his bones like financial poison. He had mistaken wealth for worth, aggression for authority, and pregnancy for powerlessness. In seeking to elevate himself by diminishing someone else, he revealed poverty of his own character to the very people whose approval could have secured his commercial future forever. The test was never about recognizing wealth disguised as common shopping. It was about recognizing humanity regardless of its apparent vulnerability. Elena's pregnancy was not deception, but reminder of life's preciousness, deliberate choice to honor dignity of those society often overlooks. Marcus's failure to see past apparent powerlessness revealed someone who would always judge worth by appearances, who would build business empires that exploit rather than elevate their communities. But in this story of commercial destruction lies deeper truth that illuminates like dawn after darkest financial night. Elena's journey from inherited responsibility to business leadership proves that character, not capital, determines lasting success. She could have used her family's wealth to forget their struggles, could have built walls between present prosperity and past hardships. Instead, she chose to remember, to honor, to test, ensuring that anyone operating on her grandmother's land understood that respect flows from character, not from profit margins. Her test saved her community from 15 more years of business leadership that would have poisoned every interaction with vulnerable people. Every moment when employees might have learned that pregnancy makes someone inconvenient rather than deserving of extra care. Sometimes the greatest act of protection is preventing someone dangerous from continuing to profit from resources your family died protecting. This story ends, but its questions reverberate through every heart that has ever been tempted to judge worth by appearance, to mistake vulnerability for insignificance, to confuse wealth with permission to harm others. When you encounter someone who appears powerless, whether they're pregnant, elderly, or simply different from you, do you see full human being with dignity equal to your own? If you discovered that someone in business with you would strike a pregnant woman they perceived as inconsequential, could you still call that relationship profitable? Or would you recognize it as a threat to everything your community represents? What does it reveal about your character when you believe no one important is watching your treatment of those you consider beneath your economic status? If you had everything you ever built within reach, would you risk it all for momentary satisfaction of asserting dominance over someone you perceive as powerless? And what does that say about what you truly value in business and in life? How many opportunities for genuine community building do we miss because we're too busy performing superiority for audiences that may be judging us far more harshly than we realize? Elena Rodriguez's story reminds us that true success lies not in what we can afford to build, but in what we choose to become. Every interaction with another human being is a test of character that we either pass through kindness or fail through cruelty. especially when that person appears vulnerable or powerless. The most powerful position any of us can hold is one that allows us to protect rather than exploit, to build rather than destroy, to honor humanity in everyone we encounter regardless of their apparent status in life. In a world that often mistakes volume for authority and wealth for worth, let Elena's quiet strength remind us that real power lies in ability to build communities rather than tear them down, to protect rather than harm, to honor dignity that exists in every human being regardless of their circumstances or apparent vulnerability. If this story moved you, challenged you, or opened your eyes to dignity that exists in every human being, regardless of their circumstances, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us share more stories that explore depths of human character and choices that define our true worth in business and in life. And don't miss part 2, where we'll explore what happened to Marcus after his empire collapsed, how the Rodriguez family dealt with aftermath of business betrayal, and whether redemption is possible for someone who revealed such darkness in their character when they thought wealth gave them permission to harm others. Sometimes most important lessons come not from success, but from watching consequences of our failures play out in communities we thought we controlled. Share this story with someone who needs reminder that respect is earned through character, not commanded through wealth or intimidated through cruelty. Because in the end, we are all tested by how we treat those we believe have no power to help or harm our business interests. And those tests reveal exactly who we are when we think no one important is watching our true character emerge.